Welcome back to the next part of quadratic factorization. In our previous video, we looked at how to factorize simple quadratic equations. In this video, we'll look at slightly complex as well as equations where the coefficient of x is not 1. So let's begin. In this particular question, we have y equals to x squared plus 3x minus 10. As stated in the previous video, we'll have to break the middle term. So the way we can break 3x is either you can write it as 2x plus 1x, or you could write it as 5x minus 2x and 10x minus 7x. There are a lot of other ways also, but these are just some examples. Now, 3x can be broken down into these three possible ways and much more, but which one is correct for this particular question? If you look at 2x plus 1x, then these two numbers, 2 and 1, have to multiply to give minus 10. In this case, 2 times 1 is 2. Therefore, this combination is wrong. Let's try the other combination, which is 10x minus 7x. If we multiply the two numbers 10 and minus 7 together, remember, while multiplying the two numbers, considering the sign is important. So the sign with 7 is negative. So let's multiply 10 with 7 minus 7. So 10 times 7 is 70. And we also have to multiply the signs now. So the sign with 10, although the sign with 10 is implicit, it's hidden, but it's positive. So if a number does not have a sign written with it, it is a positive sign. So multiplying these two signs together, positive and negative, we will get negative as the answer. So 10 times negative 7 is negative 70. And yet this is not the required way to break down 3x because we got negative 70 as the answer and we need negative 10. So let's now look at the third combination that I had written down for breaking down 3x, 5x minus 2x. If I multiply these two numbers together, so remember the numbers are 5 and minus 2 because I have to consider the signs. So 5 times 2 is 10, and the sign with 5 is plus because it's not there, and if it's not there it has to be plus. So plus 5 and minus 2, plus and minus will be minus. This is giving me negative 10, as you can see. So this is the right way to break down 3x. So we can write x squared as it is and plus 5x minus 2x as a replacement for 3x, followed by minus 10. Once we have broken the middle term accordingly, we need to make pairs and then take common elements from these two pairs. So x squared plus 5x will have x common in it. Now while x is common here, I'll divide both terms with x because taking an element common means you have to divide that with both the terms. So x squared over x is x and 5x over x is 5. Therefore, I'll have to write x plus 5, the part that is left inside the parentheses. Now for the next part, which is 2x minus 10. The number common here is 2. Also, you can see the sign here is negative. This sign has to be brought down as it is. So I have to now divide both the elements with 2 because whatever you take common, you have to divide it with the elements. So 2x over 2 and 10 over 2. 2x over 2 will leave me with x and 10 over 2 will leave me with 5. But there's a catch. In this particular situation, whenever you have a negative sign written outside the bracket, then the sign which is supposed to come inside needs to change. So a negative sign will change into positive and a positive sign will change into negative. Now the next step will be to look at the overall equation that it is right now. And if you look at this, the overall thing common, the thing which is being repeated in both the terms is x plus 5. So I'll take x plus 5 common, and because x plus 5 is common, I have to divide this as well as the next part of the equation with x plus 5. Having said that, these two cancel out and you're left with x minus 2. Moving on to the next example, and please note this example is slightly different. We have to break down the middle term here as well because that's how factorization works. So the middle term is minus 7x. Now if I write minus 7x here, I can break it down into various ways. One being minus 6x minus 1x. We should know that minus 6 minus 1 is minus 7 because minus sign makes a positive sign, so 6 and 1 have to be added. And the reason of adding a negative sign next to 7 is because minus 6 being the bigger number, has a negative sign. Okay, so minus 7x can be broken down into minus 6x minus 1x. This is one possibility. Another possibility that comes to my mind is minus 3x minus 4x. Yet another possibility could be minus 5x minus 2x, and there are a lot more. Now let's see which combination works for us in this particular case. So minus 6 and minus 1, if I multiply minus 6 with minus 1, I'll end up with plus 6 because negative into negative is positive and 6 times 1 is 6. Similarly, if I multiply minus 3 with negative 4, I'll end up with plus 12. Finally, if I multiply minus 5 with minus 2, I'll end up with positive 10. Now this is the required combination because not only minus 5 and minus 2 multiply to give positive 10, which is the constant term in our equation, but also minus 5x minus 2x is minus 7x, which is equal to our middle term. Please note once again that minus 5 and minus 2 give minus 7 because negative and negative means you have to make it positive, means you have to add them. And the reason for adding this negative sign here is because the bigger number 5 has a negative written next to it. Carrying on with the combination that we've just discovered, we'll write x squared as it is and we'll replace minus 7x with the combination that works. In this case, minus 5x minus 2x followed by plus 10. Now, again, we make pairs as we did in the previous example and we look at what's common in the first pair. So x being common means you have to divide x squared minus 5x with x, leaving behind x minus 5. And in the second pair, we can see 2 being common. Now I'll write 2 here, but I'll have to bring this sign as it is, which is negative. Now I'll divide 2x and 10 both with 2, which will leave me with x and 5. But please note, this sign, which was supposed to be positive, has now changed into a negative sign because of the fact there is a negative sign outside the bracket. So we can easily now establish this rule that when there's a negative sign also outside the bracket, the sign in the bracket has to change from the previous sign. Now, looking at what's overall common in this equation at this state is x minus 5 and we're left with x minus 2. Finally, we'll look at a question now which is different from both the examples that we discussed. In this particular question, you can see that the coefficient of x squared is 3 and not 1. Going back to the previous example, if you look at this first example that we discussed, and if you focus on x square, then the number written with x square, although nothing, was 1. So when no number is written with a variable, it's 1. Similarly, if you want to look at the coefficient of x, the number written with x, then that number was 3. Discussing the second example in the same manner, if you look at the coefficient of x square here, then there was nothing written with x square, meaning the coefficient here was 1. Also, the coefficient of x here was -7. So far, all questions or all examples we've looked at had the coefficient of x square as 1. They had a coefficient of x square as 1. But this particular example is different because the coefficient of x square is 3 and not 1. Now, when this happens, the first step that you have to carry out is to multiply the coefficient of x square. You have to multiply the coefficient of x square and the constant term. So in our case, the constant term is -4. This is the constant term. Constant term is the simple number. The number which does not have an x or an x square written with it is known as the constant term. Just a quick review. In this part, the constant term happens to be 10. So the constant term here is -4 and the coefficient of x square here is 3. So this is the coefficient of x square. So in questions where the coefficient of x square is anything other than 1, then you have to first and foremost multiply the coefficient of x square and the constant term. So let's do that. Let's multiply the coefficient of x square, which is 3, and the constant term, which is -4. Please bear in mind, I've also regarded the sign of the constant term. I'll not ignore the sign. The sign of the constant term is negative. So 3 times -4 is -12. Okay, so once I've established that the product of the coefficient of x square and the constant term is -12, I will now start the question. Please note, I have not made any changes to the question that it was originally. I've just multiplied the coefficient of x square and the constant and got -12. Now let's start with the question the usual way. We can break down 4x in a lot of ways, such as 2x plus 2x, 8x minus 4x, or 6x minus 2x. There are countless many other ways as well. Now let's see, if we multiply 2 and 2, what do we end up with? We end up with 4. Now this number that we got, -12, we have to make sure that the combination we are looking for multiplies to give -12 and not -4 as in the previous examples. This is the only difference in questions where the coefficient of x square is not 1. Normally, I repeat, you have to look at a combination which multiplies to give you this number over here, but not anymore with this question. So we'll be looking at a combination which gives us -12 and not -4. Let's look at the second combination, which is 8x minus 4x, and multiply 8 with -4. So 8 times 4 is 32, and +8 minus 4 is -32. Still, we did not end up with -12, so this is not the right combination. Now let's look at the third combination, which is 6x minus 2x. So 6 times -2 will indeed give us -12. And this is the right combination we're looking for. Therefore, I will now break down 4x into 6x minus 2x. So 3x square plus 6x minus 2x minus 4 is what I'm left with now. From here on, we carry on with the same procedure. We divide this into groups and take common. So 3x squared plus 6x will have 3 and x common in it. Now 3x being common means you have to divide both these terms with 3x. Therefore, 3 and 3 cancel in the first term and x squared cancels with x, leaving with x only, and 6x over 3x will be 2. The next pair, 2x minus 4, will have 2 common in it, and you have to bring this negative sign as it is. Now you have to divide the two terms with 2. So 2x over 2 and 4 over 2 will leave us with 2x over 2 would be x minus 4 over 2 would be 2. But we have to change this middle sign, as I've been telling you from the previous examples as well, that if the sign outside the bracket is negative, then the sign which is supposed to be inside does not remain the same and it has to change. Finally, we can look at the final step and see what is overall common in this equation. So x plus 2 is the overall thing common, the overall expression common, leaving us behind with 3x minus 2. Very well. I hope you guys have understood this factorization of quadratic functions. I'll leave the first part of this video, which is factorizing simple quadratic equations, in the description. Also, in my next video, we'll be talking about perfect square factorization. Thank you.